right, guys, today we are going to finish up our story, Lily's Crossing, with chapters 26 through 28. When we left off, Albert and Lily got safely back from going out into the bay. Graham had gotten Albert a violin, and Lily had realized that her father was in Paris based on the clues that he gave her in the book. So they wrote a letter to him. Okay. Chapter 26, St. Albans, 1945. Lily was going to be late for school. She pulled on her uniform and ran a comb through her hair. Downstairs, Graham was calling, "Don't forget a sweater, and if you're looking for your boots." Lily sighed. Next, Graham would remind her that she had left them on the living room rug again. Lily took a quick look out at the white flakes that had begun to drift down. It had been a long winter. She was tired of snow and sleet, sick of chapped lips and colds, and the wind that rattled against the windows. It seemed as if summer would never come, and worse, that the war would go on forever. She looked around for her books and her journal, Elizabeth Mollahan, My Thoughts. She had written her way through the winter, to Poppy and Albert and Margaret, but most of all in the journal to Sister Benedicta. Once she had told about the way the sea rolled and churned when it stormed, and how homesick she was for Graham's house on stilts. Another time she had written about Albert and the day they had to say goodbye. Lily closed her eyes now, thinking about that last afternoon of the summer. The tide had been high and the ocean a deep blue. She had walked with them out to the jetty. They had stood there balancing themselves on the gray rock, and she had taken the star out of her pocket for him then, one of her mother's from the porch wall. Almost without thinking, she had stood on tiptoes to give him a quick kiss on the cheek, and they had both laughed. Lily thought about Sister Benedicta now. "Some people never have a friend like that," Sister had said. "You were both lucky, Lily, even if it was only for the summer." And then she had tapped one finger on the journal. "You have promised, Lily." "How did you know about that?" Lily had asked, thinking about Poppy and the books. But Sister hadn't meant that at all. "I mean promise as a writer," she had said. Lily started downstairs for breakfast this morning, saying the word in her head, promise, half listening as Graham called, "Hot cereal on a cold day." Lily hated hot cereal. "I'm late," she began. "I don't have time for—" But she never finished the sentence. She heard the noise of the key in the front lock and stopped halfway down the stairs. She had heard the sound of that key so many times, and now she felt the blast of cold air coming up as the door opened. She felt as if she couldn't breathe because she knew who it was, knew who it had to be. And then she was flying down the stairs, reaching out as Poppy pushed a duffel bag in ahead of him and held out his arms for her. A moment later, Graham came down the hall. He held them both, the three of them rocking for a minute, until Graham said, "I smell the oatmeal burning." They went into the kitchen, Graham bustling around to make tea, and Poppy leaning against the wall, his eyes closed. "I've thought about this," he said. They sat there the whole morning, talking, school forgotten. Poppy told them about his ship passing Rockaway and seeing the Ferris wheel rising up in Playland like a ghost. He told them about France and how he had felt when he stood watching as the flame at the grave of the unknown soldier was lighted again. Then at last he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pile of pictures. Lily's mother in her wedding dress, Lily in the rowboat, Graham standing on the dock. Last was a picture of a girl in a jeep. She was holding an umbrella and smiling. "Ruth," Lily said, tracing the girl's face with her fingers. "Ruth." Poppy leaned forward. "I took your letter." "Mine and Albert's," Lily said. Poppy nodded. "I went to the convent, the Daughters of Wisdom they're called." "And she was there?" "No." Poppy shook his head. "Albert's mother and father had written a newspaper in Hungary, a brave newspaper, and the nuns were afraid to keep her in Paris. Instead, they smuggled her out one night and took her west, took her to a convent in St. Laurent, a convent with horses and cows and a river, the Sèvre." Poppy reached out for the picture, smiling. She had a dozen mothers there. One to teach her English, one to teach her French, one to show her how to milk the cows and make cheese. "And did you see her?" Lily asked in a rush. "Did you tell her about Albert? Tell her about me?" "Yes, to all of that," he said. "I showed her your picture." "And Albert," Poppy put his hand over hers. She said she missed Albert every day. She's waited through this whole war to go to Canada. She said she felt sad because she hadn't said goodbye to him. Lily sat there looking at Poppy, wanting to ask what he had told Ruth, almost afraid to hear. "What?" she began. "What did I say?" he asked her, smiling. "I told her that saying goodbye didn't matter, not a bit. What mattered were all the days you were together before that, all the things you remembered." And this is chapter 27, and it is still 1945. It was summer at last. Lily was wedged in the back seat of Poppy's old Ford with the suitcases and bags and rolled up sweaters. Her feet, resting on Graham's tackle box, were tangled in a mess of fishing line. They were going back to Rockaway, back to the house on stilts, back to the Atlantic Ocean at last. The Ford had new tires now and gas in the tank, and the three of them, Lily, Poppy, and Graham, sang all the way with the breeze coming in through the open windows. Maresy dotes and dozy dotes and little lambsy divvy. Lily knew they were almost there when they passed Margaret's house. The bottom floor windows were still shuttered, but the one in the attic was shiny and almost black in the sun's reflection. Margaret wouldn't be there this summer, might never come back to Rockaway. Eddie was still lost somewhere in France, and Graham had heard that Mrs. Dillon couldn't bear to be there without him. Listen, Lily. Graham turned in the front seat, tucking strands of her hair into her bun. Lily could feel it even before she saw it, the bridge and the glumping sound as the tires hit each plank. It sang, "Welcome back, welcome back." Graham raised her plump arms into the air. Hallelujah. Lily nodded a little, but the bridge wasn't saying that for her. It was saying, "Albert's gone, Albert's gone." She pressed her forehead against the car window, staring at the marshes, watching a seagull as it swooped down toward the pale reeds. She didn't want Graham or Poppy to know her eyes were prickling and her throat was tight. "The same," Poppy said. "I told you, it's all the same." Lily and Graham looked at each other, nodding, remembering. It would never be the same. And then they were there. She hardly waited for the car to stop moving before she was out the back door, running for the sand and the water. She kicked off her shoes and left them on the empty boardwalk, peeling off her socks halfway across the beach. Today, the water was almost calm. Tiny waves folded over on themselves, then slid out to sea, leaving small fingers of foam on the damp sand. Lily waded in, bunching up her skirt. The water was icy cold on her feet and ankles, numbing. She looked out at the gray triangular rock that jutted out near the end of the jetty, the place where she and Albert had first looked for Europe. Suppose she never saw Albert again. She leaned over to cup her hands in the water, to splash a little on her face. Her skirt, let loose, plastered itself against her legs. She dug her toes into the sandy bottom, picturing her words sliding out to sea the way the waves did out to Europe. "You're my best friend, Albert," she whispered. "The best friend I ever had." Then Poppy was in back of her, his strong hands around her shoulders, pulling her into the dry warmth of his shirt. They stood there for another moment before they went back toward the boardwalk together, Lily picking up one sock, looking around for the other one. And then she saw the cat standing there, watching her, ready to run. Lily could feel the dryness in her mouth, the sand beginning to blow against her face, stinging. "Paprika?" she asked. Slowly, she held out her hand. Okay, chapter 28. "Poppy, look," Lily said. "It's Albert's cat. The Orbans must have kept her after Albert went back to Canada." Lily climbed the boardwalk steps slowly as the cat stood there, moving back a step each time she moved forward. "It's me," Lily said, her hand out reaching. "Don't you remember?" And then the cat was in her arms, its orange coat short and rough and warm from the sun. Lily bent her head, rubbing her chin against the cat's head, listening to the sound of its rusty purring. She thought of Albert and last summer and Ruth. Now the church bells were chiming 5. Lily followed Poppy along the path to the house. Graham had opened the door and the windows on the porch. "Blowing the winter out," she said, looking up. "And here's Albert's cat." Still holding the cat, Lily wandered out to the porch and leaned on the screen. She smelled the bay and listened to the water lapping against the pilings. Someone was fishing from a rowboat, probably one of the kids from Broad Channel. Lily raised her arm to wave and smiled as the girl waved back. Under her feet, the porch floor was gritty. Any minute, Graham would be calling, telling her to give it a quick sweep and find the sheets and get her bed ready. Lily reached for her book and flipped through until she found the star. She had taken it off her ceiling last night as she packed. She put a dab of glue on it and pasted it behind the bed with the other, smiling a little. Then she went into the kitchen for a broom. "It's Friday night," Graham said over her shoulder. "The Orbans want us to come for dinner. Wash your face and—" Lily didn't wait to hear the rest. Mrs. Orban would know about Albert and Ruth. She went into the bathroom quickly to comb her hair and run water over her hands. The water came in spurts at first, the way it always did after the winter. Lily leaned forward to look in the mirror, wondering if she looked different this year. She closed her eyes, remembering that Friday night last summer, getting ready to go to the Orbans and Graham holding the washcloth over her red eyes after she'd cried for Poppy. And she thought about Albert with his dark hair and blue eyes. If only Albert were there. Lily thought about her problem list for the first time in a long time. Lies and daydreaming and friends. Need. She didn't lie anymore. Every time she started to lie, she thought of Albert and closed her mouth. She still daydreamed, though. Sister Benedicta had told her that all writers did that, and that as long as you knew the difference between lies and daydreams, you were in good shape. Now Graham was knocking at the bathroom door. "Poppy's gone down to the Orbans ahead of us," she said, "and if you don't hurry in there, the dinner will be ruined. They're all waiting." Lily made a face in the mirror, then scooped up a handful of water for her face. "I'm ready," she said. "Ready now." They walked down to the Orbans on the roadside, the tufts of grass bright against the sand, Lily carrying the cat along with her. Halfway down the road, Lily could smell the fish cooking. She could hear Poppy talking and the rumble of Mr. Orban's voice. Mr. Orban's Ford was in the driveway, the headlights still painted black. She'd help him scrape them off first thing tomorrow. Graham was looking toward her and leaned over suddenly to kiss her cheek. "It was a long war, a terrible war," she said, "but sometimes, even in the worst times, something lovely happens." "What?" Lily began. She reached up to feel her cheek, the first time she could ever remember Graham kissing her when it wasn't time to leave for school or to go to bed. She put her arms around Graham. "Zveretlek," she whispered so softly she didn't know if Graham had heard. And then she saw that Graham was pointing, nodding at her and smiling. Lily looked toward the Orbans' house, almost knowing what she was going to see, not believing it could really happen, that it wasn't just Mrs. Orban waiting at the door. She thought about the cat. Of course Albert had kept the cat. That meant, and there he was with the same mop of dark hair and those bright blue eyes, and next to him a girl with the same eyes, and she was smiling too. Lily stopped to kiss Graham, and then she was walking toward them feeling a little shy, but only for a moment, because Albert was pulling Ruth down the steps, and she could hear him saying, "It's Lily. It's my best friend Lily."